Okay, so welcome to yet another Avocado public release meeting. We are releasing the Avocado version 56. I will share my screen so we can go through the cards and the new features and fixes that we have for this version. Going through the cards from bottom to top, we moved to Dawn the Python 3 microtask. This was a generic card covering a lot of topics that we believed as being the most important things or the best way to approach the Python 3 complete migration. We did a lot of work in the previous sprint, more work in this sprint. We ticked some of the items in here, and the remaining two items of this checklist were to review and respin a pull request from Paolo with a good number of changes in that direction, and also deal with string Unicode bytes usage. For those, because we believe they are bigger tasks, we created new cards in the short-term backlog so we can tackle those separately, and we marked everything here because everything else is already addressed, and then we moved the card for the Dawn for these sprints. We are pretty close of the full Python 3 support. Kleber, would you like to provide an update on the current status?
Yes, so as Amador said it, we've been doing work for a long time on Python 3 support. Last release, we managed to have a version that could actually list and run tests. This version, it has further improvements. That was so. Just making it really clear, the previous version, we only touched the core Avocado. This version, we started looking at the optional plugins as well. There is still one big task, which is going through all the code and making sure we're not mixing strings and bytes and just like defaulting to the right data types. But besides that, most of the functionality works. And one thing that we are really looking for is to have a completely isolated installable Avocado in a Python 3 VM. That's a milestone for us. And on this specific release, we are pretty close to that. So this is one example. So here I'm just cleaning up a previous VM, creating a new one with Python 3 and activating it. And this is installing Avocado from my source code, so just a pip install. And yes, this is all Python 3. So if we do Avocado, it runs. Avocado runs stuff, works. And as I said it before, this is true for some plugins. So even complex things like the runner remote. It downloads the right fabric ports, which is fabric 3, which is an unofficial backport, but is what we can use at this point. So this is, so here I'm running Avocado in a remote machine. And this is, again, Python 3. One other piece of code we looked at, this is not yet merged, but it's going to be reviewed soon, I guess, which is some fixes to AExpect. And with that done, we can do things such as the Docker plugin as well on Python 3. So this is now installed on and this is Python 3 running on a Docker container and passing. So overall, I think it's somewhat of an improvement over previous versions. We will, of course, double check all the other plugins. And some development targets are also better now. So if you're developing with Python 3, things like make, develop, make, check should run. Not all tests will pass, but they should run. The milestone that we have is for the next release to be completely supported on Python 3, and that means having the checks run on CI on Python 3 and also packaging. So packaging itself of a Python 3 package like this is a big task. So we are not, even if we attempted, we wouldn't be able to do on this release. So it's scheduled for the next one.
Yeah, but great progress, guys. Bravo.
Thanks.
Quick question, is Fabric 3 available for Fedora?
It's not, so we have to disable the plugin on Python 3. Yeah, it's an unofficial port, so.
Sure, just wondering.
Yeah.
So I have an idea about this. It's partially related to this because I have these port. It's not quite a port. It's another implementation of the SSH library that I used in Scylla cluster tests, and I've been meaning to port that code and make it, clean to be integrated in Avocado so that we could replace Fabric. And I was thinking, while at it, maybe could be a good idea to create a new library out of avocado.utils. I was thinking that we could separate avocado.utils and make it its own library, and then make Avocado to depend on it. It's probably better for people wanting to use some of the features that the avocado.utils namespace provides without installing Avocado itself. I'm not sure. It's a choice that has its pros and cons. I was thinking that in general shouldn't be that much of a hassle having a new library, but I would like to hear some of your first thoughts on the idea.
So we have mentioned this before. I think we know that there will be extra amounts of work or care, but in general, we like the idea. We have some technical debts in Avocado due to this not clear enough separation, so it would actually help us with that. We would really define things that are outside of the scope of an Avocado test to not be present in the library. So in general, it's something that we want to do, and if we have an extra push or help, let's do it. I can probably see that matching probably an LTS release because of the packaging changes. Maybe we can start planning and developing, and I don't know. It's just like it may cause some disruption that we may want to schedule close to an LTS release, but motivation and like strategy and design wise, we're on the same page. That's something we want to do.
Definitely. I mean, it's in the short-term backlog list, if I remember correctly. But still, we have things like Job API, which requires changes to runner, etc. So I think this is the priority number one. But definitely, it would be nice to have utils, maybe even in the future, independent utils from Avocado, because that would be cool for other projects.
I even started a repo here named Per-C. Apparently, I remember Huda back in the day proposing this name, and I think for a meta library that Avocado depends on, the taxonomic name for Avocado would be interesting to use as a library name. But anyway, yeah, it's good to know that you guys feel the same. I mean, of course, there's more work, but we have to weight the extra work against the benefits, right?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's move on. Outdated Docker image. We have a Docker image with pre-installed Avocado, and it's intended to run Avocado tests in Docker containers. This image is mentioned in our documentation, and the issue here was that the image itself was outdated. The version of Avocado installed in that image was an old version, and it was updated. As part of the process, one small bug was also fixed. So if right now you try to use this image, it's expected to work, and if it's not, you should report.
Also, one additional manual step was added, so it should always get updated with each release.
Yes, that's true. It will be now part of the release process to update this image with latest Avocado. Yeah, thanks. Okay, next card, VM image, make the list of providers expandable. In the previous sprint, we introduced this utils called VM image. It's intended to provide VM image in an easy way for your tests, but the issue with that is that the list of providers was not easily expandable. I mean, user would have to edit the Avocado source code, including the new providers. And this card just was requesting to make this interface easier to use and public for the user. So that's what we implemented in this sprint. Let me show you how it works. It's quite simple. I have a different screen here to demonstrate. So this is an Avocado test class. I'm using the VM image here. I'm getting an image for Fedora, and I'm running, in my test, I'm running a QEMU process using that image. It will be downloaded in the first execution. Next executions will use the cached version. And this is how it looks like to use the VM image. Simpler way, only specifying the distribution that we are going to use. And with this change in the current sprint, you can pretty much create your own provider. So you can inherit from VM image provider base. You have to define the version, the build, and the architecture that will be the defaults. Here you have the option to provide a regular expression. So the library will not get a fixed version, but the highest version that matches this expression for both version and build. And you have just to create the URL for versions variable with the URL for the list of available versions. You have to create the URL for the image and the image pattern. And here you can use formatters to format the version, the image file name. So I'm using here version, build, and arch. So the library, when it gets the correct version and correct build and correct architecture, it will fill the image pattern. And with this, you can simply execute VM image image providers add, and then my provider, which is the name of the provider you define here. So you are registering your own provider class, and the name that you specified was my distro in this example. So you can change here to get my distro instead. So that's how easy it is to extend the VM image library with your own provider. And the good thing about this is that you can keep your downstream or internal image repositories and still use them with this library.
Nice. I can certainly see people, they're doing embedded and we get posts from time to time, people doing embedded, relating to that, not only virtualization but embedded as well.
Oh yeah. Speaking of embedded, I had a friend the other day asking me about presentations that we might have with Avocado being used in embedded testing, basically. So I told him that we do not have it, but if he wants to help us a little bit, we might create a presentation.
I'm aware about at least 2 different persons/companies that are testing embedded system using Avocado. Maybe we could put everybody in contact, so we could like create send an email to the Avocado dev list asking if someone who is using Avocado for embedded system to help or to create a presentation in that regard, or at least to start something. Don't know.
Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah, let's create that discussion on the list. Okay, next one, deal with Travis CI limitation on maximum job runtime. We had a pull request trying to improve the situation. It actually improved a lot. We had 7 commits, but the only thing that we were not able to do in this sprint was to enable the parallel check in Travis. Seems like it's being overloaded by the parallel tests, and then the time-sensitive tests are not finishing on time. But I know that Lukasz has something to talk about this. Lukasz?
Yep, basically the problem was that the Travis only allows you to run for up to 50 minutes or so, and so to address that, we tried Jenkins, it did not work, so we have to stick with Travis CI for a while. So my approach was to improve our parallel check, which is kind of cool if you have multiple CPUs, and Travis provides you with 2 CPUs. So the only cons is that parallel check sometimes shows some failures, which were actually not caused by Avocado, but some limitation, like it couldn't find some files even though they were there. So the current make parallel check retries the failed cases in series, and if they pass, it proceeds. It only allows 10 failures, which is the problem why the Travis fails, because it produces more than 10 failures, and I will try to play with it in the future. Anyway, as part of that was another check, because we as developers should review and make sure that all tests were checked. So to do that, I added Avocado check PR script, which is a contrib script. So how do you use it? Basically, I am on branch master. So first I apply. So let's say that I am taking care of this this pull request. It's number 2216. So before I start reviewing, I just open my terminal and I use my script to merge that pull request locally to my machine, to my master. So we can see that it's applied here, and there are some commits. Now I have this contrib script, which is in contrib scripts avocado check PR. When I execute my help, you can see that it allows a bunch of different options. And what this script is supposed to do, it's supposed to check the pull request, which means it will take a look at the current master and my master, compares what's added, and it checks all commits between the current master and my master branch. Obviously, you can override the branches, so if you don't feel like using master, you can. So how does it look like? So let's first try to use the -v and -d to only debug, to not run the test actually. So we can see that it would actually run 149 tests. This is actually the same behavior you would get previously on Travis, because this pull request is kind of outdated and it's based on really old head. But to be sure, we need to check all the tests between. But the actual PR commits are those 3. So you as a developer, as a pull request reviewer, should do this check, because in Travis currently we only test those 3 commits, but on your laptop you should test all commits. So to speed up things, I'm using parallel check, and I run all the check levels, as you can see here. But you can do whatever you want. And usually on my laptop, what I use is the -v to see actually to be sure that I'm running what I'm running, and to use -e because sometimes there can be some false negative, etc. So what the -e does is that basically when one of those failures fails, it asks me whether it's fine or not, so I can manually double check that it's correct or broken and force the results. Anyway, before I execute this, let's take a look here. So you can see there are 3 commits. The 3 commits are here. So let's run it, and you can see it starts the incremental check. What happened here is when I refresh, it started the check as well here. And you can see that I actually started a manual check. And as I get those commits checked, it will update each individual commit here as well, with one slight issue, which is the first commit, because there is a minor bug in the code. Yeah, I don't have a okay. And one more thing, and basically fpaste is used by default to put here the logs, so you can also see the output which comes here in the pull request. Any questions about this?
I asked about it before. What about testing only the 3 commits against the latest master? I do understand that, rebasing and taking into account all the commits created between when you created the pull request and master is helpful, but it would help save time, at least in the Travis check. So I don't know, maybe we can add a mode of this script that only tests the 3 against the latest master.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to summarize it in the end. I mentioned it in a bit when I was talking about it, but basically the changes visible to upstream right now is that in Travis pull request checker, only the 3 commits are tested. So yes, this is enabled in Travis, and that's why the reviewer should use this script or some similar script they create to check all commits in between, because we do want to be able to bisect everything and be able to know that it's not corrupted.
An alternate solution would be to request people kindly to rebase their branches right before merge. Could that be an option?
That would slow them down. I mean, another option would be obviously to just force a rebase on pushes, but that basically corrupts the GPGs. So if the user uses GPG, then it's broken. And you can't do it. That was the reason why we don't use the fast forward.
Yeah, but sure, the whole work looks pretty good.
But basically, Travis should give you a quick overview of whether it's fine or not. Then the reviewer, at least one of the reviewers, should use the script or any other script to double check that all commits in between are sane and sound. and which also includes the full test suite, not just the one which is run in Travis, because Travis only uses limited set of tests. Yep. So we actually improved.
and this is reasonable since we're doing merges manually in order to sign them, right? So it's just an extra step.
Yes, and actually, at least from my experience, when I run this, then review the pull request, or usually the manual, the self check is already finished. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and the main issue, I mean, Travis was running such check before, and we have this time limitation on Travis, and we still have to have that coverage. So the coverage, it must happen somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Next one is varianter picked plugin. We had proof of concept before, creating a varianter implementation using the picked plugin. Now we have in this sprint the actual plugin created and merged in our repository. So Kleber is going to provide a demo on this. Kleber.
Yeah, so I was saying this is like old news that finally is upstream. So we've played with this for a while, but the idea actually matured. So we even saw like people during the KVM forum days interested in it. So we started really working to get it on Avocado, on upstream, and next step is actually get it on Fedora. So on upstream, one of the new things here is that it was only a project that you could build with CLang. I pushed some changes to make it build the right way and build it also with JCC, so it's easier to get it going now. And after you have picked, it's just like a command line tool. The goal in the midterm, long term is to actually make use of its API. So we would have better control of the output we generate, the data that we get back, because right now we're just getting strings out of the command line output, but that could be done
like
better.
Python bindings, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff.
So we have an API that we can play with from inside a Python module. So that's how I see this going in. I wouldn't call it like short term, but in the long term probably. To do that, just to update you guys, I do think I have a bunch of stuff here. Let me see if it's here. Oh. I do have a bunch of cleanups. I should probably not spend time. Stash 0. Stash. Oh. No. Stash. Anyway, let's not waste time on that. But there are a number of cleanups to make it compile with WAll and WError, so improvements in general to the project. And getting back to Avocado, we now have a plugin. So when we do Avocado plugins, at the varianter section, we will find varianter picked. It's a pretty simple plugin. It runs picked with a given input file, so something like Avocado variants picked parameter file. We have one example file, and if we do this, you see the variants generated. By default, it uses a pairwise combination, so we have at least a pair of unique parameters in each test of the generated variants. So suppose you want, like looking at the example file, examples, varianter pict, params pict, you would have at least in one of the generated tests a combination, say, of host rel h and guest and Windows guest. And if we look here, we should find rel h with Windows somewhere. Here it is. So that's what it guarantees, that at least a pair of unique parameters will be found. If you want all of them, you can tweak the order. So pict order. Order. Now I don't know if I'm using the right. Yeah. No. Pict order of combinations. Order of combinations. Yes, with this you get 108 combinations because you make sure every 5 combinations, unique combinations will be present here. So the same way you can do picked variants, you can do things like run, and it's just like the expected results. So if you do like /bin/true, you have a single test for each one of them. So as I said before, kind of old news. The next steps are to push this into Fedora, both on the pict side and also on the Avocado plugin side as well, because we've seen people showing interest in it.
Okay, very nice addition.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and we can expect these optional plugin to be released as a separate RPM in the next version. So it will be.
It seems that the pict format is a little more crude than the Cartesian file /varianter, the YAML that we developed. Like, having ways for you to declare that in certain combinations, certain parameters have different values, or am I just, I just didn't look enough?
It does have a lot of logic. You can say, I think I can show you a really quick example. So this is something this is something we demo on KVM forum, and this is an example picked file.
Mm-hmm.
So QEMU IMG convert. So this is like trying all combinations of conversions using QEMU IMG, not all, but a bunch of them. And this is like one of conditional. It says if the output format it's not QCOW2, then let's not use compression. And this works pretty well. Like it will only use compression, which is a separate option, if the output format is QCOW2, which supports that. So the variants are generated accordingly. There are actually a number of features which we haven't spent some time with, like submodels. We have to evaluate those. For now, it seems like it has even more than we need at the time. I mean, for those basic use cases.
It's just that the syntax is a little bit different. We use sort of control flow snippets to do it. Okay, good to know.
Okay, as next card, check output functionality should allow for combined standard out and standard error results. We had a lot of activity regarding this card, and we actually have a new functionality in Avocado. I mean, added to the output check record. Weber, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, so this is the kind of thing that you would think would be an easy fix. And we actually spent quite some time looking at how we could get it done. At the process API, I think we have got it done. we have to add some tweaks now onto how we run tests inside process. We discussed this hour ago or so. But just to go through what we needed here and the reason for those changes, initially, conceptually, we decided that every time we were running a process, we will split output and error because it may make sense to differentiate between them. Fair enough. But in reality, once we are splitting things, we cannot ourselves put them together in the right order if we want to. So the way to do it is to switch between a split mode and a combined mode, and this brought in necessary changes to the process API. Why is this relevant? Because some external test suites which use the output check record feature, like they behave the same way, actually do it like they send both the output and the standard error to the same place. So this is an example from QEMU. This is a QEMU IO test, and the way they run the tests is they run the binary with errors sent to the same stream of output. And this is actually makes the golden file, which is what should be checked when we run the tests. So if we were to support something like that in Avocado, we need a change to that. So output check record, we introduce the combine mode. I'm gonna use a simple that runs faster test script. So if we do this t.shell, what we're gonna have is on t.shell, we're gonna have t.shell.data generated and output is expected. So everything in the right order. So standard out, standard error, standard out. Usually we would get this with the split channels most of the time, but not all of the time, since it's based on timing. And the whole point of having this is because we should be able to run QEMU IO tests. Like, let me use 26 because 26 actually generates stuff both on standard output and standard error. If we just look at this is the QEMU version. So you will find write failed input output error, write failed input output error, and this makes into the very same file. And after we have the test finished, a few seconds. Bad example for for a live demo, but it's taking longer than I expected.
Yeah, but that's great because well, when I created this feature, I didn't imagine it was going to be necessary. I should have thought of that, but yeah.
So there it is. It took 54 seconds, and the result is that 026 data got generated and output that expected, and this file should match what it's pre-recorded in QEMU, and it does. So yeah, right order, everything goes to the same place. And just to give some heads up on what we're planning here, the QEMU IO test is just one example of the test that can take multiple parameters, like the type of file formats that are used, the type of file-based backends or NFS or NBD. So what we're really coming with here as a plan is to use the newly introduced features such as the picked plugin and being able to run a variation of all those different file formats with pre-existing tests and checking that the output matches. So this is what we're aiming, like really making Avocado suitable for running out of the tree external test suites with all those kind of advanced features that we have. This is our master plan.
And trying really hard to make people use that instead of shell scripts, because I know how hard it is.
Yeah.
You can show them gold and I'll just use my shell script here.
Yeah. I think we're getting better feedback than we used to. People are more open. So, and even the more we investigate the like maintain your own framework kind of approach, we see that people find like limitations and shortcomings all the time. So what we're really proposing is let us do the heavy lifting. So I think people are more and more inclined. We still have to fix a bunch of stuff on our own side, but we are pretty close, I would say.
Yep. And this is the result of the work you guys have been putting into Avocado consistently. So yeah, again, bravo.
Thanks.
Okay, nice. Thank you, Clever. Next card. Do we need to use Fabric 3 as a dependency? This was a card / question. Resolution of this card is yes, we do. And we had some patches actually. We are using backport of Fabric 3 to support Python 3. Still, what do you have to come with this, Clever?
No, I think the demo showing the runner running with the remote runner running with Fabric 3 is the answer to that.
And last one, just another documentation card about how to subclass Avocado. There is documentation on that. It's a very straightforward example with this so-called apricot subframework, which is inheriting from Avocado test and then creating their own test class on top of that. And it's just about documentation because we know that there are many use cases for creating subclasses of Avocado test class and start your so-called sub-framework from that point. So we just created this documentation. And that's pretty much all we have in this sprint. We still have some minor issues in our Travis check and the last test that we created over the last week and last weekend. But you can expect, of course, a new version in the upcoming hours or days. For the work in progress, what didn't make it for this release, and it was expected to make, was the picked package it as an RPM. We had this pull request proposed to the picked repository, but so far we just got
plus one.
and nothing else, but still waiting for them to handle this. It's basically the spec file for picked.
And then make it go to Fedora, right? So I suppose that's the next step.
Yeah, I've already run Fedora review on it. It has a bunch of things, but yeah, let's get the basic stuff there and then work from there.
Next one is default to recursive. We have this docstring tag recursive, which marks a test class to be discovered, to have the parents methods also discovered and included in the test suite. And we believe that this should be the default behavior. I mean, instead of marking your test subclass, Avocado should just discover everything as if it had these defaults to recursive, but this did not make it to this release. We came up with some tricky corner case, and we decided to just wait one more sprint to have this really shaped, because this is pretty much the core of the discovering process of Avocado tests. So next one is install properly defined data files. We had some activity in this card, but still it's not ready to go. We've tackled virtual env layout, but we still have some things to go here. Python 3, I expect there is a pull request in place. We expect this to make it for this release because the pull request is ready, unless there are some like very wrong concepts in here that I don't believe it's the case. This will make it for this release.
Yep.
It's actually what I
Well,
use.
standalone, I mean,
Yeah.
it has a release cycle on its own. So
Yeah, I think Amador means this cycle like this. Yeah.
Yeah, it will be like available. Next on Avocado VT, add Avocado and other requirements. We have a pull request, which is for Avocado VT. It was revealed and still pending some activity.
Yeah, I was supposed to review it again. I apologize, but I'll try to do it before this release as well. It's on the Avocado VT side, so I think
Avocado VT. Yeah.
the Avocado VT side should be fine. There is still the easy install task, which is sort of pending on my side, because the problem with the easy install is it does not allow Python package to create files outside of the package. And Avocado and as well outtest, for example, it creates /etc entries. So I need to create like basically the right in package Avocado configuration file and fall back to /etc Avocado if available, and the RPM should create the /etc file as expected by users.
basically Python packaging should be pure Python packaging, and RPM should deal with the differences.
Yep.
Okay, and the last one, it's not, I mean, the card is not making it to the DOM list, but still we had activity, and we figured out that writing to std out or std error should not affect the runner. I mean, writing for those from the test should not affect the runner, but we believe that this is a bigger task, and we have to better separate the test subprocess from what the runner has as the standard output and standard error. And regardless the fact that we had some activity and some pull requests, the card itself, I mean, the final solution is a bigger task, and we still keep this card in the work in progress until it's completely done.
Yeah, so judging by the card description, so right now it should be safe enough when we run simple tests to have output going to the right place, but that's just the execution of the test method inside the simple test. That basically means the binary. There is of course some boilerplate code that runs as part of the Avocado core test that calls the test method itself. That is not as well as protected. And what this card description says is that for instrumented tests, it doesn't have any protection. And we tackled some of it because we tackled some of the process.run issues, but there's a bigger issue at the test level that we need to address, and like come up with clean semantics on what a test process is given and how it can communicate to the test runner, both for control status message and for output.
Okay, nice. So that's what we have for this release. The sprint backlog was already prioritized. As you can see, we have a small sprint backlog, and when compared to the previous versions, the previous sprints, because we have some parallel tasks for these sprints, and they include working in different projects as QEMU and also internal stuff for Avocado VT and different architectures. So the sprint backlog is smaller, but it doesn't mean that we are going to have less stuff to do. And what we have for this sprint, besides the work in progress cards that we are already working on those, is to give another try to the enable parallel check on Travis, implement different summary levels for picked varianter. I mean, the new picked varianter plugin, it shows the variants that are created, but we did not implement the summary. I mean, the extra information like details, different levels of verbosity, exposing the actual parameters content in each variant, and this is what should be implemented. JOS for PowerPC 6.4 and Arch 6.4. We intend to create the image and populate our image repository with those. This card is expected to generate a RFC about the way we control the export of parameters as environment variables. Right now we export the parameters, we flatten the tree to simple tests, but there are some tricky cases where we can override system environment variables and so on. So we have to create an RFC and standardize, discuss, and implement a proper solution for this. Define and improve source of test parameters. This is probably the one of the main features that we expect for this release, because right now, if you are not using the YAML Mux plugin, there is no easy or simple way to provide parameters for your tests. And what we want to achieve here is to have a simple parameters interface, so we will not always depend on the YAML Mux plugin. And two so-called bugs: single data dir, getMP dir per interpreter breaks multiple jobs. So if you have multiple jobs and you are using this API, you can experience some breakage, and this card is pretty much intended to address that issue. And the last one, test reference filter not working for directories. You know that creating or specifying your test reference, they can be defined together with a test filter, which is a regular expression which will match the results. But this test filter, this test reference filter here, is not working when you provide the directories. It's working only for files, but for directories, it's being just ignored, and is probably something easy to fix, but still high priority because we are calling this a bug, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all. We have to create the new columns. Let me create a new list here. This will
no, I don't have a name yet.
no worries. I'll put one at some point when you have it done.
Star Trek Discovery.
Goes here.
Yeah, why not? Let's let Lucas name this time.
This.
I'll take a suggestion. Yeah.
Star Trek Discovery, is that the name?
Yeah, Star Trek column Discovery.
But now, Lucas, you have to.
It's Star Trek. No, it's Star Trek. The Spock.
Yeah. Sorry. It's my hand doing automatically. Star Trek Discovery.
I think it's separated, isn't it?
It's Star
Space Trek.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in the group chat.
And we got a message about AXPEC being merged, so let's just get rid of that card.
Yep.
Okay, Star Trek. I think there's no C, right?
There's no C, yes.
Yes.
Star Trek Discovery.
Discovery.
By the way, if you haven't watched it yet, recommend it.
Nice. You know what's annoying? Back then we would like be looking for content, looking for movies to watch, and nowadays it's looking for time. Like the backlog is so ridiculous. Oh my god.
Okay, guys, so we are 1 minute late. If you don't have anything else, I would call the end of the meeting.
Nothing on my side.
I'm fine as well.
Okay, so stopping broadcast.